What do you think? And I know you can't. You guys always have a pretty good idea how a draft's going to go, but what do you think you'll get at 28?
Well, this year is a bit of a unique draft, and it's been labeled a lot of things, but
Yeah.
it's just different because there's not a lot of separation in the players this year. So it's a little more difficult, but at the same time, just a little more attention to detail for ourselves to make sure that we're prepared for any kind of scenario. And so, like, where we're going with it, it could go in a number of different directions. I mean, because we're picking 28th, there's a lot more things that can happen up until 28, And so for us at this point in time, we're just preparing for almost any kind of scenario. So,
when you're in that position, I don't think you draft for need. You kind of just
we draft the best player. We're gonna draft the best players available based upon the information that we have in the guys' discussions and our meetings. We'll draft the best player. We're not, we don't look at a roster and say, oh, geez, we don't have this or we don't have that, because we're not talking about players that are going to be in the lineup next year.
Yeah.
We're talking about down the road, and we want the best assets. So later on, if we have too many defensemen or too many forwards or too many goalies in the system, then that's up to Pierre to make a deal. But at least we've acquired the best assets for him to work with.
Do you think, like, when you say this draft has been labeled a lot of things, why do you think that is? Is it because the high end talent isn't there, Trent?
Well, the number of a high end talent.
Okay.
When McDavid and the Matthews and the Eichels, like those names, they separate themselves, and then the second part of the draft kind of begins. There's not a lot of that this year. You hear the discussion between Patrick and Hischier, and even Patrick, there's a history of injury there over the last several years. So what direction those teams want to go in at that point in time, it remains to be seen. But we're talking about two players, and then it goes from there. And it's there's not, if you look at public lists, there's not a lot of defensemen in the first round. So if a team wants defensemen or in need of a defenseman, then they may have to step up on that if that's how they feel they go about their business. But for us, 28, if that's what we're picking and nothing happens, we'll take the best player available.
A lot of the mock drafts have kind of had you taking a goalie. I discussed that with Pierre last week, and he didn't seem to think that a goalie in the first round was something that...
We've evaluated the goalies. We didn't take a goalie last year, so it's something that we have to be... we have to keep in the back of our minds, like, when do we want to pull the trigger on a goalie? But we're not going to take a goalie for the sake of taking a goalie. But if we feel that the goalie is there at a certain time, we're not really worried about when it is. We're just that we'll take the goalie at that point in time if that's how we feel we want to go. So, are we willing to take a goalie? Yeah, definitely willing to take a goalie. But it'll just depend on the situation at that time. So,
but. Does the organization need a goalie at some point in this draft?
Well, the organization needs all kinds of assets right now. Really, we're a little deeper on defense. Maybe I don't think that's a big secret. But at the same time, at 28, do you pass up on a really good player for the sake of taking a goalie? No. But if the goalie is the best player at that point in time, then you take him. And so we're monitoring that. We're going to see how that first round goes and how the second round goes, and we'll evaluate round by round to see, who's been taken. And typically, once the goalies start to go, they kind of go, So we're prepared to take a goalie if we have to. But at this point in time, to say, oh, we're taking a goalie at 28 or 47, that's not accurate to say that at this point in time. So.
Are you? Do you have any thoughts about, if you see a guy maybe sitting there in the later rounds, would you maybe say to Pierre, maybe can you go get me a fifth so I can? Well, what rounds don't you have picks in right now?
Right now we don't have a third, we don't have a fifth, and we don't have a seventh.
Okay.
So we're 1, 2, 4, and 6.
Okay.
We've had some pretty good success of taking players later rounds.
Yeah.
Stone, Hoffman, Pajot, Dzingel. Those are all mid-round to late-round pick guys that we're ready for that scenario as well. And we feel we can pull guys out of that, in the 4th round and 6th round as well that can play for Ottawa. And if there's a guy we feel really strongly about it, and no problem saying to Pierre, listen, we've got to do something here and see what he can do. And Pierre understands that. That's the nice part about his background. He understands that sometimes those things occur, and him and I have had discussions about those types of scenarios. So we're ready to kind of be ready to get that done if we have to.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Like, you've cut your teeth as a scout, and this is your first time this is going to be your decision.
Yes, exactly.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm looking forward to the opportunity. I mean, this is it's a lot of years of work, and we have a staff that I trust a great deal. So I'm quite comfortable making those calls. I've presented different scenarios that could happen. I've kind of fell back to those guys on different scenarios that they've had in the past, and so really excited, looking forward to it, and really confident in the group that we have that we'll make the right choices. So
I think when the playoffs started, you guys were probably going to choose 17th or 18th, something like that. I mean, as it went further and further, and you saw
well, there's a price to pay for success a little bit sometimes, and while we're winning and you're excited, you're thinking, well, now we're going to fall. But you know what? This might not be a bad year for that to happen, just because there's a good possibility at 28 you could get someone that you feel a lot more strongly about, just because that seems to be how the draft is set up this year. So, but if we had to pick 28th every year because we finished in the Final Four, we had to pick 30 or 31 because we're in the Stanley Cup final. Like, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that.